Today, I'm pumped to welcome Josh Donnelly to the My SBA Loan Pro podcast. Josh's story isn't your typical Wall Street resume. It starts on a cattle ranch in California's Central Valley. He's the founder of Stone Canyon Advisors, where he helps business owners unlock generational wealth by making their companies truly acquirable. Before that, he was running his own cattle ranch, learning firsthand what it takes to build and scale a tough business. That grit eventually pushed him into investment banking at Stifel Nicolaus. 120-hour weeks, billion-dollar deals, the whole furnace of high finance. From there, he sharpened his skills at a boutique M&A shop before finally stepping out to build his own business. What makes Josh unique is the mix: rancher's mindset, investment banker's rigor, and builder's strategy. At Stone Canyon, that shows up in the Acquirable Platform, a system designed to boost exit value in just a few years. Today, we'll dig into his journey, what he's learned going from banker to founder, and how his framework can help you build a business buyers can't resist.
So if you're on the precipice of just a big decision, we'll call it like that, of starting a business or leaving a business or acquiring a business or selling a business, I think you have to be very honest with yourself, very honest with what your identity is wrapped up in. If you are not doing the things that you believe you've been called to do, then you have to get to the bottom of why, or even better yet, just do it. Just do it and figure it out later, right?
Josh, thank you for coming on the My SBA Loan Pro podcast. It's great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ryan. Excited to have a conversation with you.
Absolutely. So, Josh, can you tell us a little bit about your background, what you're doing now, and how you got to this point in your career?
Yeah, totally happy to. So I always like to start that question back in the production ag days. So I'm from a cattle ranching family, and that was the business that I was in through the end of undergrad. And I say undergrad like I went to grad school, but I didn't. So just through the end of college.
There you go.
And, that was the family business. That was also the business that I started in. This is shortly after junior high school. I started buying cows for myself and running a small cattle ranching operation.
Where?
In Northern California. So I'm from Sacramento area, just south of Sacramento in the Central Valley. Started to buy cows. This was me trying to build a business. And that's how I thought about it at the time.
In high school? Yeah.
So started the summer before my freshman year, all through high school, all through college. That's what I did. I was buying cattle. I was going to school in UC Davis, which is about 40 minutes from where I'm from. And so a lot of driving back and forth. I was also working for other ranches at the time. I was working for UC Davis. They have a huge ranching operation. So I was managing that while I was going to college too. That was all my experiences. Got really lucky through the network at UC Davis, which is a great school for agribusiness executives, to meet some people that were in agribusiness finance and private equity. And they kind of opened my eyes to mergers and acquisitions. There was a gentleman there that was from Australia who I looked up to a lot. He was about 10 years older than me at the time. And he told me, if you want to go into mergers and acquisitions, you need to become an investment banker first. And that was the first time I'd heard the term investment banker. Mm-hmm. So I had a lot of questions, including like, how does one become an investment banker, right? I'm just like fresh off the farm at this point. I knew nothing, but I spent the end of college trying to figure out the answer to that question. Like, how does one become an investment banker? And I got really blessed to get a job at Stifel Nicolaus and Company in Los Angeles right out of undergrad. So that was formative. Classic investment banking experience where you right out of undergrad, you're working 100 to 120 hours a week.
Wow.
You're focused at that time on models, PowerPoint decks, pitch decks, memorandums in Word, reviewing legal documents. It's 100 to 120 hours of just that type of work, like heavily detailed work. Mistakes are things that cost the firm millions, so you can't make them, right? Wow. It's really kind of a furnace environment that I find really valuable. It's interesting with the proliferation of AI right now, that opportunity is not gone, but it is evaporating. I don't know all the details about the large firms like where I came from, Stifel. Like, I don't know what their hiring looks like now, but I would bet that if it's not here now, in the next 5 years, they'll probably be hiring, I'd guess a tenth of what they would have hired back when I was running the hiring process at Stiefel, we'd hire, 40 or 50 people just for the state of California offices out of undergrad every year just to do that, right? And these are things that AI is really good at replacing. So it was an amazing formative experience for me. You get to see a lot of deals. You get to become world-class at something that's really valuable out in the marketplace, and that's kind of just the transacting side of deals. So did that for 3 years. Like everyone who does that, burned out, right? It's not fun. I personally didn't really like living in LA anyway. I love LA now that I don't live in it, but living in it was hard while working that much. Also being married, my wife was working in San Diego. So there was a pull for me to come back or to come to San Diego, my wife to come back to San Diego. So we, at the end of 3 years, there's sort of an up or out function in those large firms like that. Like you're either committing to stay for a while and get promoted, or you leave and it's just okay and it's expected. That's the culture of the firm. So I opted for out, and I came to San Diego and I met my former partner down here who was running a boutique M&A advisory firm. So that's another kind of like slot within the investment banking world. I'd came from a high yield debt kind of capital markets team in an investment bank, went to an M&A advisory team in an investment bank. Another just super formative experience for me, right? I'd been around a lot of M&A transactions, but to have the different role where instead of kind of like the high yield debt financing, to have the seat as the intermediary at the table was different and formative for me. So I was there for 8 years, 9 years, something like that. And then I launched at the beginning of this year my own firm and built my own team. Stone Canyon Advisors is the name of the firm.
Awesome. Yeah, tell us about Stone Canyon Advisors, the positive aspects, why you wanted to be a business owner and founder, and the platform that you're building at Stone Canyon. Yeah.
So we call it Stone for short, which I love. It's powerful. It rolls off the tongue really well. So that's, I'm going to just refer to it as Stone. So I started Stone because I had kind of seen a couple of things that were internal to me that I wanted out of life, right? And one of those was to build a business, and in particular, a platform business. And you're going to hear me talk about a platform business in more detail soon enough here probably, but I wanted to build a platform business. It's a vision I had since I was a kid, right? And buying cattle and trying to think through like, how do you scale a business that's notoriously difficult to scale? The cattle business is one of the hardest to scale. So I've been thinking about that question since I was in my early teens, and it's never left me. It's something I've thought about constantly. And so I needed to, for me, build a platform business. There were some specifics around building a platform business that I thought this is going to be best served by me starting from scratch. And a few of those were like kind of a geographically agnostic team, kind of like a different go-to-market function, which includes a lot of media, like your go-to-market function includes media, right? I think that's best in class right now in this market to serve your customer base and your kind of like fan base, if you will, with a lot of educational content. So like educate, and then every once in a while sell, right? I think that's world-class right now. And so I needed to be able to execute on that kind of media strategy, I call it. And so that's what we did. And by the way, I don't really know how to do those things, but I thought what I think I can do is to be a great leader and attract those people who know how to do that. And I'll just shut up and listen, and I'll do what these people tell me to do. And so we launched, the step one is like, you got to get a base of clients so you have some revenue to build off of, right? So there was a couple of weeks where it was just me at my desk, and you don't know what to do with your hands, right? You're like, I just need to keep calling somebody until they sign this agreement. And it's uncomfortable because you don't know what to do, right? And if you're in an operating situation that's ongoing, you don't stop and start something new. You never run into that, right? There's never I'm just sitting at my desk moment. But when you stop and you start a new company, you have a I'm just sitting at my desk moment, and I have no idea what to do, right? You've been through that too, right?
Yes.
It's a funny moment, and it's a feeling you don't feel very often. And so like there was just for me like a lot of introspection there, a lot of prayer, a lot of talking to my wife to make sure that I was, staying on my skis and not getting sideways or anxious or blowing something up with my anxiety, right? It's a couple of weeks of real anxiety. And then we started to get the clients to sign up, and then everything that it's like the frost just melts, right? And you're like, oh, I'm back to myself again.
Yes.
This is the flow that I know. And so that, that when that happened, then I went and I started to just tell the marketplace that I was looking for people to hire. And I started with, I need an analyst first and foremost. Then I need a vice president, right? There was just kind of this order I had in my head of like, this is the order that I'm going to pursue people in. Mm-hmm. And it's funny how in some ways I was right. And in some ways I had no idea what I needed. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, but when we got the revenue coming in, I started to bring on people, analysts, then a vice president. And then, just like a really cool moment for me was my now partner, a gentleman named Josh Hotzenpiller, who is not an investment banker. He is an operator and a 4-time software founder. He and I were just as friends and people that love business. We were working on a project together. I just started a company. It's a time where creativity is flowing, right? So we were working on a project, which is kind of what, you do when you're a startup type of person. I'd never been that before. So he and I were working on this project, which was a web-based assessment for companies to just get like a score on how prepared they are for M&A. We first called it like, is this like a bought versus sold scale, something like that, like, on the nomenclature, or the old saying like that great companies get bought, not sold. So we kind of called it like a bought, not sold scale. And then we hashed out further, and I said, like, that doesn't brand really well. Like, we have no idea what this thing's going to do for us, right? But it's a fun project we're working on. He exited his last software company and had been consulting for folks that were looking to exit. I'm an investment banker. I sell companies, right? So we thought like this is coming to maybe a lead gen tool for each of us, and we'll just kind of figure out the economic share whenever we come to that point. But right now we're just having fun. And so I saw in him somebody that I worked very well with, who moved at the same speed that I moved, who wanted to be creative and approach the market in a different way, which was very much in line with me. Also had like a very similar set of values, very similar set of standards around work product. So just a lot of great alignment. I proposed to him that this tooling, this assessment, this that was at this point in web development, that could be our lead gen tool internally. And I'd like to basically, it's shared IP right now, and I'd like to instead acquire your part of that in exchange for some Stone Canyon ownership. I'd like you to be my partner. I want you to build Stone with me, right? Pivotal moment. We sat down and we talked about what the vision was, right? Because it's not just an assessment. It's the fact that he was a builder, and as the CEO of companies, he knew how to make every decision with the exit in mind. I knew what exits looked like and what good and bad exits looked like. I know how to get information from buyers so we can determine what we're going to build a company to. And we developed what we call now the Acquirable Platform. So that assessment, we branded it the Acquirable Assessment. And we have the Acquirable Platform, and that's our branding that we use throughout. So shameless plug, we also have the Acquirable Podcast.
Yes.
Which you've seen. And
yes.
And where we're interviewing CEOs and founders, CEOs past and present, about the companies they've built that were irresistible and they've exited. And so we walk through that story with them in our Acquirable Framework, which is tell us about the efficiencies, tell us about the financials, tell us about the culture, tell us about the scale, and then let's talk about the exit and what you learned. And it's really interesting what we've just like learned from those conversations with people who aren't M&A professionals. Maybe it's the only exit they've been through, and just kind of the raw emotional processing that they do with us. So our platform is working with companies for 2 to 3 years before they exit to help them build to a buyer universe and make every decision during that time period with the exit in mind. 2, change the math of the exit to be, let's say just illustratively, that, before you do intentional work, maybe your company is one that would sell for 4 or 5 times EBITDA, and they're are sets of motions, and we know them to be around 4 pillars: efficiencies, financials, culture, and scale, that can take a company like that and make it sell for something more like 6 or 7 or 8x, right? And so on the extreme ends of the spectrum, there are things you can do in the last 2 to 3 years of a company to, at times, double the value of it. And people don't think about that. And if they were being just a bit proactive, it can mean generational wealth for their family. It can be changing event for their family, right? And we know how to do that. We know how to do that both operationally and from an M&A execution standpoint.
Got it. Tell us who your ideal client is. So the client that's ready to sell now, or the client that, as you had just mentioned, isn't necessarily ready now, but they're ready for you and your partner to roll up your sleeves and to prepare them for the sale. And then also tell us the sandbox, the revenue number that you typically play in.
Yeah. So I think the most important thing for us, for our whole platform offering, is to have alignment with an ownership group where they want to build and they understand that doing very intentional work streams for the next 2 to 3 years is going to increase their exit math substantially. And so there's just a cultural and mindset alignment there that's I think the biggest definer of our ICP, like our ideal customer profile, right? And we're modular, so we don't have to do all of that work. If somebody wants us to sell, we will just sell them. And we approach that a little bit differently too, centered around storytelling around the 4 pillars of value. So folks come to us, they still engage us just to sell the company, like I've always done. But we love when there's people that have alignment with us and see the opportunity to build for 2 or 3 years and will work with us on that. And you'd be surprised how many people, once they understand that the opportunity's there, they're very interested in doing that kind of work for 2 or 3 years.
Got it. And what size companies are you dealing with typically?
Yeah. So a small client for us right now is about 15 million in revenue. Our largest client right now is 150 million in revenue. So that's kind of the sandbox, lower upper brackets.
Got it. And what makes a company ready to sell? And then obviously the next question is, what makes a company almost ready to sell?
Yeah. Man, there's a lot of things that can make a company not ready to sell, and it's a spectrum on those same things to becoming almost ready to sell and then very saleable. And our 4 pillars exist for a reason, right? That's our way of defining what those things are: efficiencies, financials, culture, and scale. And so diving into each one of those and assessing it very honestly is the most important thing. That's what our assessment does. Is, it's a very complicated thing to make a decision how ready someone is for sale, but this kind of does the best job I've seen of boiling it down. Scale 1 to 10, how ready are we? 10 being super ready, we could have sold yesterday. 1 being this isn't going to get sold. There's a lot of things that are obvious there, like having revenue and EBITDA, right? Like that is needed for a saleable company. If you have IP and it's not been commercialized, it's going to be very difficult to sell that. So having a financial track record and profitability to show that there's like a commercial opportunity in a company is right. That's easy. Everybody kind of knows that. There's less obvious things, right? Like having a company where there's documented standard operating procedures, video being kind of the best in class again here for procedures for a company. Companies may operate really well. It may be because they have really well apprenticed employees and middle management and things like that, but it's still just processes living in people's heads. It's just been taken from the founder and entrusted to maybe 10 or a dozen if you're in a really well-scaled company. World-class scale. So the scale pillar, world-class scalability, comes from having documented processes, usually in the form of videos that show people how to do things that they need to do day to day in their job. And there's, and if we had time to sit here, we could do a whole episode just on like things like that. There's little things like that and some big things like that people can do and should do to make their company more saleable.
And how many businesses that you are contacted by or referred to are ready when there's the point of contact?
Yeah, it's about 10%. So yeah,
So most companies
it's really
are
low.
not ready.
Yeah, it's really low. And for us, just, from a business perspective for Stone, that was partly why we saw a commercial opportunity for the platform, right? If there's 10 companies that come to us that are leads and only one of them's qualified and the other 9 are not, but they're real companies, it tells me and tells a good business person and told my partner and I that there's additional service offerings that we need to bolt on to our platform, right? We're capturing those leads and we're going to get even more of those leads as time goes on. So we need to have an offering for them. Because if 9 customers are walking out the door of the store not having bought something, it means that you're not carrying something you need to carry.
Yeah. And what I like about what you're doing is you are the one to take them to market.
Yeah.
But you're also the one preparing them for market. So we know that there is a lot of fragmentation in the industry where there's companies that will prepare you for market, but then there's the companies that want to take you to market.
Yeah.
But the fact that you guys have synergy and you're doing that together, I think that gives you guys an advantage and the company owner an advantage in selling for, like you said, a higher multiple, because you know exactly what it needs to look like. And then you're also cultivating buyers.
Yes.
So you have a target. So you're working with the sellers, you're preparing them for sale or going to market, but then you're cultivating the buyers. And you alluded to earlier that you're cultivating or that you're selling businesses based on the buyer appetite.
Yeah.
Talk about that and talk about how for sellers or potential sellers, business owners who are watching this, why that's such a game changer for them as business owners.
The best summary I ever heard of this was the first client that engaged us for our platform offering. There's 6 people on that executive team, and every meeting that we had all 6 executives in it. And there were probably 4 meetings during this kind of pitch and like selling phase, right? And one of the executives, this was the topic of conversation, right? One of the executives was like, hey, if we had a house and it was like in shambles and we needed to renovate it, we could either renovate it to be something that we think looks good, or we can go like find out what buyers are looking for. Who are the buyers? Are they millennial buyers? Do they have no kids? Do they have 2 kids? Are they middle-aged couples? Are they empty nesters downsizing? Like, who's the buyer of this house? And then let's renovate it to them. And that was like his way of describing the value. And I just like, he said it better than I ever would. Right. And that's just it. You cannot intuit what the buyer is going to value if you're looking at it through your lens. Right. So if you're a founder or if you're an SMB owner, you're looking through your glasses and they are not a buyer of a middle market business's glasses. And so if you can go find out what those buyers are looking for and build to that, and I don't mean build to one of those, right? I mean, build to the universe of buyers. So maybe there's, in any given industry, there's probably going to be 6 or 8 to 15 or 20 different strategic buyers out there that make sense to buy your company, right? And they have a track record of buying companies like yours. And there's going to be a profile we call this a buyer pro forma in our engagement. There's going to be commonalities between that group that you can build to, so you're not hanging your hat on one hook, right? Or you don't have all your eggs in one basket. Like, you're just building to the universe of buyers to maximize the chance, because that's going to be the group that's going to buy you anyway, right? So if you can maximize the chance that you're attractive to them 2-3 years from now, you're going to have a better exit because you built with intentionality and you built with market knowledge.
Got it. So give us some success stories of transactions you've worked on, how you've built rapport with the seller. Maybe the seller's expectations was one number, you were able to work with them and get a higher number so that they exited, like you said, with more dollars, generational wealth type of thing. If you can explain that, that'd be great.
Yeah. So there's really there's kind of like 2 critical things to getting more than you bargained for in an M&A transaction. And one is like making sure you have good competition, right? So there's multiple buyers that you're talking to, or the illusion of multiple buyers, right? The other is having the 4 pillars dialed in. So having something that really is attractive, objectively speaking, to a buyer in the market, something that's attractive and kind of easy for them to say, yeah, we want to buy that and we can pay up for it. So those two things are so important together. Part of that is amazing storytelling and authentic storytelling. Part of that is amazing knowledge of the buyer universe and deep knowledge, and maybe even sometimes like relationships with the buyer universe. And then kind of a third leg of that stool is like a technical underpinning in due diligence to make sure that nothing's going to stand in the way of the deal that we struck, right? No due diligence issues pop up.
Got it.
So, on that note, like some case studies, examples, like we have a client right now that we were preparing with them for a management meeting, which is where buyer and seller meet. And this was our first management meeting in a series of management meetings we were hosting with buyers. And so we're having kind of a sit down whiteboard sesh to understand some things with them, because we feel that the magic of that business had not been like appropriately explained in a way that a third party would come in and grasp. We sat down with them and just kind of asked the basic question, like, how do you guys make money? And now we've been working with you for months now. So no, we're not asking you like simply how you make money. We're asking them to kind of walk us through the flywheel. Right. And so there was resistance there, right? Because they had not thought about the business in that way. When they thought about the business, this business in particular, they thought we have some good years and we have some bad years, and it kind of depends on the development cycle we're in with our products, right? We're like focused on a product, and then there's the rollout, and then there's the big up year, right? And it shows up sometimes in revenue, especially in EBITDA. And so we just asked them to dig that up more and to show us each year if we could just kind of split it, and you don't have to, we told them just ballpark it for us, split like how much was this and how much was that kind of development related stuff and how much was production related stuff. Well, an hour into just letting the team kind of run this process and write on the whiteboard, we have the story of the company, which was that design leads to prototyping, leads to production, which is, increasingly great economics through each of those steps. So if there's years of high development expense, that is negative to EBITDA and positive to the future of the company. It is a leading indicator of big years later, right? And so we like that right there in the Jim Collins language is the flywheel, right? That's the company's flywheel. More development equals more production. And then we pour the dollars into development that leads to more production. So exposing that, this client just, and I don't want to go into like many terms or anything like that here, but like the deal, because we were able to illuminate that for a buyer, it's a market deal. It's a much better deal than what it would have been if that had not been understood and explained well.
Yeah, it's like, we have some bad years, we have some good years.
Yeah. Like, what does that mean? A buyer's like, I can't trust that.
Yeah.
I can't underwrite that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so being able to illuminate that and explain it as a third party that's kind of objective and thinking about things from a buyer perspective is critical for getting at times a fair value and at times, what clients don't expect. They don't know what they have in a company sometimes.
Got it. So we talked about this. Talk to us about things that people can't learn in your industry by going to Google or YouTube. Yeah.
It's my favorite thing in the world is like, I'm always in pursuit of knowledge that you can't get on Google. Right. And I think that, like YouTube's such an amazing resource, right? This is probably going to go on YouTube. You can learn a lot on YouTube. But there's just things I've seen time and time again that you can't unsee in this industry. And they're so counterintuitive, things I still have never heard anybody talk about on the internet or write about, right? Like I've seen companies that, I'm going to give a couple of examples, and this is one that's present in any trade space. It's almost always a risk or an opportunity in a trades-based business. There are generally 3 ways you can get revenue in a trade. One is by working on the ground up construction site, usually as a subcontractor for a general contractor. The other is working directly for like a customer or a brand, doing retail rollouts or tenant improvements or something like that, right? And these aren't perfect examples. It's a broad example. But if like a Starbucks decides that they're going to redo all of their bathrooms and they're going to give a work order to a contractor, a tradesman for like 1,000 stores, something like that, right? That's a separate way you can make revenue in a trade. And then a third way generally you can make revenue in a trade is from preventative maintenance, repair, and kind of like replacement parts, right? Mm-hmm. Same trucks, same toolkits, same people, same training, same background, totally different businesses. Many times the trades-based businesses will have multiple of those streams. They'll do some, they'll do some tenant improvement work and they'll do some ground up construction. Or maybe they have a service component and then they'll do sometimes some small tenant improvement. Well, the most important thing is that they're worth wildly different amounts, right? Mm-hmm. In a vacuum, if you had a company that was 100% ground up construction, 100% retail rollout, and 100% preventative maintenance, this would be worth nothing, the ground up construction business, right? The retail rollout would be worth like probably mid-single digits on a multiple. And then the preventative maintenance business is going to be worth maybe high single digits, maybe low single digits, depending on the industry and exactly what that preventative maintenance work looks like. But that's a wild spectrum for the same training, right? And it's all about the revenue model. So I've seen companies that have multiple of those revenue models just completely cut off their construction business. And they do it thoughtfully to make sure it's not going to impact some more valuable part of the business, but they can completely cut off the construction business and have the size of the company and end up with a more valuable company.
Wow. Yeah. You don't think like that typically, right?
Ever. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's as they would say, that's sustainable recurring revenue.
And a buyer would look into it and you might say like, well, we had the service business, the maintenance business anyway, but it was bolted onto a construction business that maybe made your company not saleable. Mm-hmm. So cleaving that from it makes all of the buyers who were scared by it happy now. They're excited, right? They're like, we get the service business. That's what we were interested in. So we'd like to buy it now. So I just have seen things that you would never think of. They're counterintuitive, I call them. You would never sit and reason your way to that without seeing that it was true, especially when you're in the seat of a founder or a growing company. Be gut-wrenching to make that decision. They say these days that all media is good media. And most business owners would say that all revenue is good revenue, right? It's not when you're selling a company.
Yeah.
Right. When you're trying to make ends meet and you're trying to put food on the table, trying to support a family as an entrepreneur. Yeah. Like probably all revenue is good revenue. But if you're building with the exit in mind and you're trying to make a company that's irresistible to a buyer, all revenue is not good revenue.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a clear and distinct difference between operating a company and preparing or selling a company.
That's right.
And one of the things that I found in my practice when people come to me, especially when they're interfacing with a lender, is that all of their inputs are wrong. What they think is going to be a great answer is the wrong answer. And the one that always gets people is they will provide me a business plan and they want to be a passive business owner. So they think the way to fix that or the way to entice the bank to want to finance my loan or finance my acquisition is by putting out this other person who's got all this experience. They have great credit. They have a great track record. And then what they'll say is, oh, that person can run the company and that's why I can be a passive owner. And I said, so just so you know, if you do that, the bank will actually think that's their borrower.
Yeah.
So they'll attach that person to the guarantee. They'll want that person to then inject capital. And what do you think the likelihood is of that person actually doing those things?
Zero.
And they say it's
Where's
zero.
Where's the camera here? It's zero.
That's right. Zero. So then I say, so like delete that.
Yeah.
Like absolutely delete that. And what I love about your experience is what you're saying is that, a seller, and they could be great, right, at swinging a hammer. They could be great at tenant improvements, all these things. But when they get into your arena, they're not great at selling a business. And that's where you come in and that's where you say, hey, stand back. We're going to actually show you how to sell a business.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And they might even, it might even be like more and more advanced tasks, more, and I mean this from a monetary perspective, more valuable tasks. Like they might be great at selling huge clients, right? And getting, 6-figure, 7-figure, 8-figure contracts even. That is even then a totally different motion than building a company for exit.
Got it. To segue, can you tell us what an engagement looks like from a timeline perspective?
Yeah, happy to. So let's just call it 3 years. Let's say it's a 3-year engagement. It doesn't have to be. Our platform works anywhere from 18 to 48 months out. But 3 years kind of makes it easy because we could talk about it in thirds. So the first third of that is us doing a 75-point diagnostic on the company. That diagnostic is completed by the CEO, 5 functional heads. So even if there aren't really truly 5 functional heads, we kind of pick the best approximation of that throughout the company. So that's like your CFO, your COO, your head of HR, your head of sales, right? And then one more there that I can't remember what I listed off, but the functional heads take it and the CEO takes it. Then we hold a series of meetings to understand enough about the business that we'll also take it. So we diagnose the company and then they diagnose the company. And then we run a gap analysis to show where there's internal gaps and external gaps. So internal gaps meaning amongst the teammates and external gaps meaning between us and them. And then we produce playbooks based on the gap analysis for each of those functional heads and the CEO to run.
Got it.
And those playbooks are, however long the engagement needs to last. The engagement duration is really structured off of their goal, right? If they want to sell in 18 months, then we make it happen in 18 months. And they run those playbooks. When they get to a point that things are in good enough shape, then we are, I want to take a half step back. We produced also at the same time those buyer pro formas I talked about. So the universe of strategic buyers, some private equity buyers, and what they're looking to acquire in this space, very specific things like what they expect customer concentration to be, how the leads are generated, kind of geographic desires that they have. If there's if there's different kind of ways that revenue is produced, like the example I gave earlier, like ground up construction, tenant improvement, maintenance, like we're going to understand each buyer and what they're looking to buy out in the market to that level of granularity. And we provide the client with those buyer pro formas. When the company's at a point that they're ready, we'll initiate conversations with those buyers on behalf of the client and start running a slow process where they receive confidential information, sign an NDA, receive confidential information, and a memorandum about the company so they get to know the company, and then host quarterly meetings for the next year as if you were kind of a public company and you were addressing your analysts quarterly. This is also kind of what I've seen in the private equity world. When they own a company, they will allow prospective buyers to meet with management quarterly so that they know at the end of their hold period that they have a likely buyer pool that's familiar and can move fast. So we do that. We recreate that same dynamic and have quarterly meetings where a small group of buyers are able to meet with the management team, get kind of management discussion and analysis, and see quarterly financials. And then there comes a time where like we're ready to sell, they're ready to buy, right? And then it's an M&A process from there. There's data room opened. They get access to the data room. They do their due diligence. We're asking for indications of interest. We probably have already gotten them by that point. And then we're asking for letters of intent from them, moving through a quality of earnings to closing with them.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a fascinating process. Like you said, it's not a quick process necessarily. It does take a lot of due diligence, and you're with your clients the whole way. So not only do you know your clients, but you know the buyers.
Yeah.
And that's critical.
Yep.
So what I'd like to do now is pivot from talking about the functionality of Stone and to talk about the founder of Stone and talk about the transition that you alluded to earlier from being someone who woke up, went to work, had things to work on because there was a pipeline, there was a history, to, okay, I started this company and this is why I started it. And if you can talk about the creative process, can you talk about how that affected your family? Can you talk about why this was the right time for you? Was it because you felt like, hey, I have the experience, or did it feel like, well, it's now or never? And you can go into depth on that, because a lot of the people that are watching and listening to this, they're going to be in a transition where they're buying a business or they're starting a business.
Yeah. 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 It's an amazing question. And I think it's the most important question. Right. And I think that there's a couple of truths around this, right? Some things that are irrefutably true. And one of those is that we all want to have the guts to do something that's big and brave. Right. Mm-hmm. And the other truth is that many of us don't. And so I think that you have to decide, you have to at some moment decide, like, am I going to do it or not? Right. Because either I need to stop pretending that I'm a builder. Yeah. Right. Or I need to start building, whatever that looks like. Right. And it doesn't have to mean starting a company, but I think you have to be brutally honest with yourself in life about who you are and what you expect of yourself and whether or not you're living up to it. And I am, just as a person. It's not always fun to be like that with yourself, but it is always good, right? Yeah. I'm surrounded by design by people that are like that, right? Also, so my wife is like that. My wife comes from an entrepreneurial family. I come from an entrepreneurial family. My friends are very entrepreneurial, right? Like, I'm surrounded by people that expect a lot out of me. And mostly because I expect a lot out of myself. So I think just for your listeners, like, if they're maybe they're like on some kind of precipice like that I just described, where they want to do something, they feel maybe called even to do something, and they're just not yet, and they're not sure why. Understand why, right? And at times it's because it's not time yet, right? Mm-hmm. I believe that there is like a master creator that sets timing. Mm-hmm. So it may not be time yet. It may also have been time already and you're not doing it, right? Mm-hmm. You're not taking the jump. And so if you realize it's the latter, then you need to, for your own integrity, you need to do it, mm-hmm. right? And so for me, I think that calculus was like, I never did feel called to start a company. I have always felt called to build something and to build a company, and it never mattered to me whether I started it or not. And so I think I had to stop and look honestly at the amount of time that I had spent trying to build something that I didn't start, and realize that maybe the best approach here is to just start from scratch. Mm-hmm. And the short-term evidence has been that was true, because things are just so different now, and things that I've had in my head for so long that I thought and kind of hypothesized would be the right way to build. Turns out they're very marketable. They're very commercial, right? And I see very early evidence of value. I'm trained to do that. I'm really great at seeing commercial value. Mm-hmm. And so for me, the evidence is there that starting something was the right thing to do. But if you're an acquisition entrepreneur and buying something and building onto something that someone else created is the right thing to do, mm-hmm. then do it. There's no pride or particular reason to start something or to buy versus build or anything like that. For me, I don't believe in like moral underpinnings of one approach versus the other, or like superiority of approach, right? It's all about the economics for me, and how commercial is one approach versus the other. So if you're on the precipice of just a big decision, we'll call it like that, of starting a business or leaving a business or acquiring a business or selling a business, I think you have to be very honest with yourself, very honest with what your identity is wrapped up in. And if you are not doing the things that you believe you've been called to do, then you have to get to the bottom of why, or even better yet, just do it and figure it out later. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I started Think SBA, before I started it, I was telling my wife, we're going to crush it. I can't wait. Yeah. And then I gave my 2-week notice. They took the 2-week notice and made me work 2 weeks. But those first few nights after I was no longer employed, the strangest thing happened. I woke up in the middle of the night with this pit in my stomach.
Yeah.
Fearful.
Yeah.
What did I just do? I'm not getting that ACH direct deposit.
What was your time? What was your time of night that you always woke up?
So I always woke up probably like around 1 or 2.
Yep.
And
I'm a 2:30 guy.
there you go.
Not every day, but when I'm in that I'm in that zone, it's 2:30 in the morning, and I just call it like it's like destiny's knocking on your door. Hey, time to get up. We're gonna think about some stuff.
Yeah. So it was the third night in a row, and I had this thought, and I've never woken up this way again about my business.
Yeah.
And the thought was, Ryan, you chose this.
Yeah.
And who cares if you fail? Who cares? You know, I had a runway, and as soon as I embraced the fact that I chose this, like you said, for me, it was the right time.
Yeah.
People say, Ryan, you probably wish you would have done it 5 years earlier. And I said, no, I don't wish I would have done it 5 years earlier, because what I did was I trained under somebody and a group of people who taught me from the credit side how to be good at credit. I was always decent at sales and marketing and communication, but getting that deep knowledge of credit is what launched me and Think SBA to what it is today. It's one of the few loan brokerages throughout the country where I tell my clients, I'm going to underwrite your deal. Yeah. I'm going to take it to the banks, and I'm going to tell them what I have, what we have.
And without your time in that dojo, I call it, right?
Yeah.
You're just training. Like without that, you wouldn't have the close rate you have now.
No.
You wouldn't have like evangelical clients that you have now. You wouldn't have people like me that is like very comfortably telling people like your loan is not going to close in a reasonable amount of time unless you work with Ryan, right? Yep. It's that time you spent there that I think is important for people that make big decisions, like for you in that zone and me in that in the zone that I just came out of, like to be grateful for that time, to not regret that time, and to speak highly of that time, and then move on, right? And speak highly about it and move on and do something big in the future.
Yeah. And one of the things I've seen in you personally, because I've known you for several years, we didn't interact deeply for those several years, but what I've seen from you is that you're much more accessible. You're creative. You have the podcast. You're excited to tell people this is what I'm doing. Not that you weren't excited before, but I think that freedom of being a founder, and I think being a founder is amazing.
Yeah.
Being a founder is amazing because you get to put that clay on the wheel, which is your business, and you get to mold it and shape it, and then you can knock it down, and then you can reform it. But I've seen you as an individual become more, the only way that I can say it again, expressing yourself in this is what I'm doing now.
I appreciate you saying that. You know, I think for me, there was separate and related to this whole season, just like identity work that I had to go through, right? Like knowing who I am, feeling confident in who I am, loving who I am. Mm-hmm. And then from that flows forth like a willingness to share it with people. Yeah. Like you're not self-conscious. You don't mind if people don't listen. It doesn't mean anything if they don't, right? But you feel like you have something that you want to share. And so you're open to sharing. And I think that's how it feels inside me, the expressiveness that you're seeing. I appreciate you saying that and bringing it up, because it is a big change for me in my life to be present in the kind of media world, right? And it's a huge part of our strategy now at Stone, which I never thought I'd say. Also never planned on being a founder. And there was no deep feeling that I wanted to start something, you know? So all these things, all these changes, it's just funny to me that they're all things that I just never really necessarily wanted, but I love them now that I'm doing it, right? And I love that like my boys are seeing me do this.
That's huge.
Yeah.
You're Davy Crockett.
I know.
I mean, you're in uncharted territory.
Yeah.
You're carving new paths. I love that.
Yeah. My boys are 3 and 1. And I mean, they just are doing everything they can to copy me right now. And I'm sure that'll go away over time. But right now they're doing everything they can to copy me. Mm-hmm. And I feel very confident that that's a great approach for them. Right. Mm-hmm. Like I think that's great. Please do copy me. I think that what I'm doing is worth copying, you know, and I think that that's an amazing thing to be able to say as a dad. How many dads out there feel like they don't want their sons or daughters to copy them, right?
Yeah. Well, it's been great, Josh. Thank you so much for coming. Dude. I really appreciate it. It's a fascinating story. I love what you're doing. I love all of the words you gave us. So for my viewers and listeners, if you don't know what those words mean, go Google them and learn a lot. So thanks, Josh. Have a good day.
Thank you.